Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Black Widow, Nebula and Wanda? Part 3. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time let's get into the video. An hour later. Sam, Naruto, Will, Nebula, Murray and Steve walked through some trees as they headed for the trilion, with Steve wearing his old World War II Captain America outfit. Classics never die, huh? Naruto asked as he looked at Steve's outfit. Nope, they sure don't, Steve said with a grin. He also found it quite nostalgic as he wore this when Hydra was just starting and now he's wearing it as Hydra ends. Okay, let's get this mission started, Nebula said. Do you have a plan? Will asked with a raised eyebrow as she crossed her arms. Before you make a plan, you should know Hydra has a kill on side order on you, Vandam Fury said over the comms. Wonderful, she said sarcastically as she threw her hands in the air. I'm assuming it's because of her ability to manipulate tech? Nebula asked as she crossed her arms over her chest. Yup. They are scared of her more than Naruto because all secrets are at her fingertips, Maria told them. If we can get her to one of their computers secretly, we can win instantly, Nebula said with a smirk. Not happening, I refuse to risk her, Naruto said as he flat out refused this plan. I agree, Steve said as he refused to sacrifice anyone just to win. Oh relax, I have been working on a move that will make it so they can't stop me, Will said with a confident look. You talking about that move you got from that manga? Nebula asked her curiously. Will smiled at this and nodded. Flash step? Naruto asked knowingly as he saw her reading Bleach lately. That's the one, Will said with a grin as she gave Naruto a thumbs up. What is manga and what is flash step? Steve asked with a peaked eyebrow. No time to explain, but let's just say she's gonna make Hydra pull their hair out, Naruto said with a smile. So what's the plan? Nebula asked everyone. Okay, we have 3 helicarriers that need to be neutralized and we need to get to their main computer to get the information on them and put it online, Naruto said as he punched his fist into his palm. Okay, I'll lead She-Hulk and Talon to take one of the helicarriers, Nebula said, referring to Jennifer and Laura. Crystal and I can take care of the second one, Will said. While me, Cosmo and Sam can help Steve with the third, Naruto said. And Will helping Nick get the information on the net? Steve asked with a raised eyebrow. After we take out the helicarrier, I can have Lockjaw make a portal to Nick, Will said. Lockjaw? Portal? Nick asked over the intercom. Long story, so we'll explain later. Now, let's go ruin Hydra's day, Naruto said with a smirk as the group rushed towards the trilion. At the trilion, moments later. Once the group had reached the building, Naruto was quick to summon Cosmo, Laura, Crystal and She-Hulk to help them. And thanks to Cosmo using his telepathic powers to help catch the other 3 up to speed, they were all quick to agree to help before they all split off into the designated groups. Sam was flying with Will towards one of the helicarriers as he said, so how do we know who are the bad guys? The ones that attack us, I would assume, Crystal said as she kept up with them by riding on Lockjaw's back. Won't matter, once we are close enough Lockjaw can teleport us into the helicarrier, Will said as she looked at said dog. Lockjaw barked hearing this, showing that he was ready. Good boy, Will said with a smile as she gave him a thumbs up. Suddenly, some soldiers came out on the deck of the helicarrier and opened fire on Will and the others. Wow. They really don't like you, Sam said looking at Will as they avoided the bullets. Geez, they are so scared of my ability to talk to tech. Time to show them something to really fear, Will said as lighting sparked around her legs and she disappeared in a flash. Where did she go? Sam asked in absolute shock as he looked around for her. Wait for it, Crystal said knowingly as she crossed her arms. Suddenly, all the soldiers that were firing at them were sent flying in random directions, like they were struck by someone using a giant blow dryer. What the hell? Sam asked in surprise, seeing this happen as more soldiers were sent flying. Soon, a man came out and pulled a gun and aimed it at Crystal. Will suddenly reappeared in front of him in a flash and kicked him hard in the face with a lightning-covered kick. Rumlow, I presume, Will said with a scowl, remembering Steve's description of him. That's me, sweetheart, he said with a sneer as he got up from the ground from Will's kick and rubbed his jaw. I'm surprised you're still standing, since most of you wannabe Nazis are weaklings, Will said as she cracked her neck slightly. Hydra is better than them, Rumlow growled out as he pulled out a knife and held it in a reverse grip. Oh, I'm so scared, Will said in fake fear as she flashed out of sight again. Hum at me, you freak. Rumlow yelled, ready for anything she might try and do. He then saw Crystal fighting some soldiers with Lockjaw and he walked towards her, knife at the ready. Suddenly, Will appeared above him and grabbed his face with a glare that could melt steel. She then lit up her whole arm in lightning, shocking his face hard. Rumlow screamed in pain as Will held onto his face and he dropped his knife. Will finally dropped him and he fell to the floor passed out with his face completely scared. You go after my friends, you suffer asshole, Will growled out as she stood on him extra hard as she walked over to the others. Wow, you have a mean streak, Sparky, Sam said, seeing what Will did with wide eyes. Like I said, you try to hurt my friends, I'm done playing nice. Now, let's get to the main computer, Will said, looking at Lockjaw. Lockjaw barked and teleported them all to their destination. Wow, you weren't kidding, a teleporting dog, Sam said, as Will approached the computer and put a chip in, which lit up. One down, Will said, pushing her earpiece to report to the others about their progress. I'll go and help Cap, Naruto and that psychic dog with their helicarrier, Sam said before he flew off. Good idea. Meanwhile, me and Nick have an appointment with a certain group of assholes that we need to keep, Will said, looking at Crystal and Lockjaw. Lockjaw barked and they disappeared in a warp. With Nebula. Nebula, Jennifer and Laura were making their way to the main computer when some soldiers appeared blocking their path. Okay boys, we can do this the easy way, Jennifer said, while cracking her knuckles. Or we can do this the fun way, Laura said, as she showed them the claws on her hands. Please choose the fun way, as it'll be more exciting for us, Nebula added as she pulled out her shock batons and put them together. The soldiers looked at the three women and saw how serious they were. I'm out, a soldier said, as he ran with the others following him. Nebula scoffed at this and approached the computer. Pussies, Laura said, sounding disappointed. I'll say, Jennifer said with a shake of her head. And I was so hoping that they'd choose the fun way, she said with a pout. Well, at least they showed they weren't stupid, Nebula said, as she finally finished putting the chip into the computer. Aw, but I like it when they're stupid, as that makes it more fun, Jennifer said with a grin. That why you are after Naruto? Laura asked curiously, as she tilted her head. He's not stupid, he's just shy, Jennifer said with a smile. Save the girl talk for when the mission is over, would ya? Nebula asked, as she rolled her eyes. Fine, the other two said with a shrug. We can gossip later, do a girls' night or something, Nebula said, as she turned and walked back the way they came. Oh, you're opening up, Jennifer said with a smile, as she lightly nudged her. Is this normal with friends? Laura asked, as she followed after them. Jennifer slung her arm over Laura's shoulder, as she said, stick with me, and I'll show you how friends usually act around each other. Nebula nodded, as she activated her comlink. It's done, she said into it. With Naruto. Naruto, Steve and Cosmo were on their way to the main computer when Naruto got the message from Nebula. Good job, now leave the rest to us. Go round up any Hydra members you can find, he said. I'll keep any soldiers from getting to you guys, just don't take too long, though Sam told them over the comms as he avoided a Quinjet from shooting him out of the sky. Thanks Sam, Steve told him. Soon they saw the main computer down a hallway, but it was being guarded by the Winter Soldier. Bucky, Steve said as he slowly advanced towards his friend. His mind is struggling, he thinks not following his orders will cause him pain, Cosmo said to the two of them. He has a compulsion to obey Hydra, no matter what, Naruto said, getting it as he rubbed his chin and thought. Okay, the plan is we subdue him and Cosmo frees him from Hydra's control, Steve said as he pulled his shield off his back and put it on his forearm. Exactly, Naruto said as he made some clones who charged at Bucky. Bucky pulled out his machine gun and fired at the clones, which hit their mark, making all the clones make a bunch of smoke. Suddenly, Bucky's gun was pulled from his hands thanks to Cosmo's telekinesis and thrown from the area. Steve's shield was then thrown through the smoke at Bucky, which he dodged and landed on the glass dome below. Steve caught his shield after it ricocheted back to him and jumped down towards Bucky. Naruto jumped down and made several hand signs before he slammed his hand on the floor and summoned a big orange toad. Hey Naruto bro, what's the problem? The toad asked him. The guy with the metal arm, I need your help subduing him, Gamakichi, Naruto said to the orange toad. No problem, Gamakichi said before he shot his tongue out to wrap around Bucky after he'd thrown Cap back with a punch to the chest. You will not stop me from completing my mission, Bucky said as he jumped over the tongue with a somersaulting twist. If you mean protecting the computer, too late, Naruto said with a smirk. Bucky looked up at the computer and saw Cosmo at it using his telekinesis to put the chip in. Bucky pulled out his sidearm, but before he could aim at Cosmo, Gamakichi's tongue grabbed him and slammed him into a wall. Before he could recover, Steve slammed his shield into his chest and held him in place. Hold him, while I fire, Gamakichi yelled as he spat some goo from his mouth at Bucky, which Steve dodged just in time and hit Bucky, which then made him stick to the wall. Bucky growled as he tried to pull himself free, but he couldn't move no matter how hard he pulled. Don't waste your time, that stuff will stay sticky for at least an hour, Gamakichi said, proud he succeeded in helping subdue this guy. Cosmo, do it now. Naruto yelled up at the dog. I'm on it, Cosmo said as he hopped down to them. Do it quickly, this ship will be going down soon, Steve said as the helicarrier started to shake. Cosmo ran over to Bucky and as he touched his head with a paw for a brief moment, the glass wall Bucky was stuck to crumbled away and he fell into the water below. Damn it. Naruto yelled as he punched a steel bar in frustration, which bent slightly from the punch. Bucky. Steve yelled as he leaned out to look for his friend. I was able to at least mostly free his mind with that brief moment, Cosmo said as he sat down. So there is hope? Steve asked with a hopeful look. Cosmo nodded as the helicarrier shook some more. Let's get out of here, Naruto yelled as he grabbed Steve and Cosmo and they disappeared in a flash of yellow just as the helicarrier hit the water. But Will had just arrived in the meeting room along with Crystal and Lockjaw where Nick was waiting with Natasha and Pierce. Pierce's eyes widened, seeing Will. What's she doing here? He asked as he gave Fury a hard look. I'm here to expose you and your bullshit, Mr. Secretary, Will said with an evil grin as she tapped the computer screen and images of all of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s deepest secrets flashed rapidly on the screen. And there, it's all out in the open, Will said with a grin as she crossed her arms. Natasha smiled at this and looked at her phone which had all of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s secrets on it. I hope that you're all prepared for the consequences for doing this, Pierce told them. We were prepared to do this from the start, Fury said as he crossed his arms behind his back. Yay. We may get some backlash, but you and all your worthless buddies will suffer more than us, so it's worth it, Will said with a savage grin as she gave him a double bird. Pierce growled in rage as he pulled out a gun, but Fury quickly pulled out his own gun and shot him in the head. And I thought that Logan was hardcore, Will said, seeing Pierce's body on the floor. Crystal looked away while covering her mouth, not used to seeing dead bodies. Suddenly Naruto, Steve and Cosmo appeared in the room. Hey guys, what did we, holy crap. Naruto was saying before he saw Pierce's dead body on the floor. Is it done, Uzumaki? Nick asked as he put away his gun. Yay, the helicarriers are all shooting each other down as we speak, Naruto told him after getting over his shock of seeing Pierce already being dead. Are the others okay? Crystal asked him. Why don't you ask us yourself, Nebula said as they entered the room. Your team is impressive, Uzumaki, Fury said nodding at them, grateful that they helped him. Thanks, glad we could help. Now if you excuse me, I have better things to be doing than dealing with the fallout of this, Naruto said. Nick raised his eyebrow at this as he said, oh. And what would that be? Living my life, that's what Naruto said as he crossed his arms over his chest. Yay, we all need downtime, Will said in agreement. After this, we need a vacation, Nebula said as she stretched her arms over her head. Oh. Let's go to Vegas. Jennifer said as she rubbed her hands together. Yay, sure. You all did great, so you deserve a vacation, Naruto said, nodding in agreement about having a vacation. Hey Nat, you wanna join us? Will asked her, with a beaked eyebrow. Natasha looked at them with a calculating eye. Yay, sure, she said with a shrug before walking over to them. See you later, you scurvy dog, Will said with a wave at Nick before Lockjaw teleported them off to Vegas. Fury just shook his head at Will's behavior before he headed for the chopper he came in on. Vegas rooftop. Naruto and his group had just arrived in a flash on a rooftop at dusk. Man, that's gonna take some getting used to, Jennifer said, feeling dizzy from being warped by Lockjaw from Washington to Vegas. Well, at least it's cheaper than flying or driving, Naruto said with a shrug. So what's the plan? Natasha asked as she had never been on a vacation before. The plan is that I send Lockjaw and Cosmo to go get some other friends of ours and then we go shopping for clothes that fit Vegas, Will said with a smile as she crossed her arms over her chest. Who are you inviting exactly? Crystal asked curiously. Rogue, Kitty, Jessica, Trisha and Colleen, Will told her. You should also invite Shuri and Okoye, Nebula said with a smile. Ah, the princess and the baddest warrior Naruto was hitting on in Wakanda. Will asked with a smirk at Naruto, who rolled his eyes. Naughty naughty, Jennifer said with a teasing smile. Isn't Wakanda a third world nation? Natasha asked with a curious look. Nebula snorted at this before saying, oh how little you know, Miss Super Spy. Hush, Naruto said with a hard look at her. Right, your promise that you made, Nebula said as she waved her hand in the air. What promise? Crystal said with a tilt of her head. Nothing, Naruto said all too quickly. I smell a secret, Will said as she gave Naruto a piercing look. Laura looked at Cosmo. What's he hiding? She asked the psychic dog. Wakanda is actually a high-tech nation who hides it from the world so that others don't steal their secrets, Cosmo said, so that everyone heard him. Hey. Naruto said, not amused with how quickly Cosmo spilled the highly classified secret. Relax, they won't tell anyone, Cosmo said with a knowing tone as he scratched his ear. Yay, and who am I gonna tell anyway? S.H.I.E.L.D. Natasha asked with a smirk at Naruto. And who would believe us anyway? Jennifer said as she crossed her arms over her chest. Okay, let's get the others, Lockjaw, Will said as she dragged Crystal with her before they disappeared in a flash with Lockjaw. Meet you all later at that hotel, Naruto said while pointing at a big hotel. Ooh, oh, one of the best ones too, Jennifer said with a smile. Impressive. You wouldn't be trying to impress us so you can have your way with us, would you? Natasha asked him with a raised eyebrow and a teasing smirk. Why do I always attract teases? Naruto thought as he sighed. I blame your blasted luck, finally biting you in the ass, Kurama said as he laughed loudly. Oh zip it, would you furball, Naruto thought to him, not wanting to deal with Kurama's mouth. Furball, huh? Kurama thought with an evil smirk. What are you planning? Naruto thought of Kurama as he had a suspicious look on his face. Nothing, you go have fun with your vixens. Just make sure not to get them pregnant too quickly, Kurama said, trying to sound innocent. Naruto rolled his eyes at Kurama's antics as a flash appeared behind them. Will and Crystal had arrived with Jessica, Trish, Rogue, Kitty, Colleen, Shuri and Okoye. That was quick, Natasha said surprised. Well, we have this good boy to thank for that, Will said as she scratched Lockjaw's head. Lockjaw gave a happy bark before he licked Will's hand. Okay, let's go, Cosmo said looking at Lockjaw. Where are you two going? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. We are heading back home, since this place is only fun for humans, Cosmo said. You better not trash my place, Naruto said with a frown. I'm above human debauchery, Cosmo said as he turned his head up slightly as him and Lockjaw left with a warp. Glad that you could show up, Nebula said, looking at Shuri and Okoye with a smile at her friends. Well, it's not every day I get invited to a weekend of fun and have a chance to make friends, Shuri said with a smile. And a princess must find a way to relax every now and then, Crystal said with a knowing look. You're a princess too? Shuri asked, surprised to meet a fellow princess. Crystal gave a nod before her and Shuri talked as they compared their different kingdoms and roles as princesses. I'm surprised that you came, Naruto said, looking at Okoye. Well, someone has to watch the princess and make sure nothing happens to her, Okoye said with a firm look. And you wanted a chance to jump, Naruto, Shuri said with a smile. This caused Okoye to glare at Shuri with a blush on her face and caused some of the other girls to laugh. I like you, your majesty, Rogue said to Shuri with a smile. Shuri shook her head at this. No need for that, just call me Shuri, she said with her own smile. Jessica and Trish approached Naruto. Nice harem you have going on here, Jessica said with a smirk. Is there any room for us? Trish asked with a smile as she put her hand on her hip. Are you kidding, between his stamina and clones he will knock us out, Will said while laughing. Don't tell Logan that, he's already going nuts looking for Laura, Kitty said with a smile. Naruto groaned with his hand on his face as he said, if I don't die from villains, then I'm sure that Logan will surely do it. I'll protect you from him, Laura said as she walked over to him and slid her arms through one of his. Bold, aren't you? Naruto asked as he gave her a small smile. Laura scoffed at this. That's not bold, this is bold, she said as she grabbed him by his collar and pulled him into a rough kiss. Oh cool, a floor show, Jessica said with a grin. Those lessons with us on flirting finally paid off, Rogue said as she high-fived Kitty. Naruto pulled away from Laura and caught his breath. Damn, you work fast, don't ya, he said to Laura. I get what I want, Laura growled with a flush on her face. Whoa there, let's get into town first before you try and get him in bed with you, Will said with a grin. Yay, I want to go shopping for clothes, Jennifer said. Gotta have your girls look good for Vegas, Natasha said as they all headed for the ladder down from the roof. Why do I feel like by the end of the night we are gonna be banned from the city? Naruto thought as he followed them. Must be your imagination, Kurama said with a shrug as he laid down. Hours later. Naruto and his girls were all dressed up for a night on the town in Vegas, with Naruto in a suit and the girls all in different colored beep-tail dresses that showed off their figures. Naruto was currently playing blackjack in a casino, with Jessica standing slightly behind him as she rubbed his shoulders. Naruto was easily winning every hand he was dealt, which upset his opponents greatly. 21, the dealer said as he flipped Naruto's card over. Naruto smiled as he was given his winnings. I think it's time we moved on, Whiskers, Jessica said as she saw some security guy coming over to their table. Agreed, Naruto said with a nod. As they left, they saw that Okoye was fighting a couple of drunks. What's going on here? Naruto asked as he walked over. One of these men slapped mine in the princess ass, Okoye said with a look of fury on her face. What? They were both fine-looking asses, one of the men slurred out. Naruto glared at them, his Rinnegan flashing at them, which sent them flying into a fountain nearby. Cool off, creeps, Rogue said with a scowl at this. You two okay? Naruto asked Okoye and Shuri. Yes, we are fine thanks, Shuri said as she gave him a grateful nod. I should have gutted them like the pigs they are, Okoye said, as she gave the men a heated look. True, but then Prince Charming here wouldn't have been able to save his damsel in distress from those guys, Jessica said with a smirk, as she pointed her thumb at Naruto. Tell that to Nebula, Kitty said, while pointing at Nebula, who was nearby holding a third guy in a hold that was obviously gonna break his arm if she moved. Next time you touch me, I keep the arm. Got it? Nebula growled out. Yes ma'am, the guy yelled out. Nebula let him go and kicked the guy away from her. Nice job, Trish said with a smile and an approving nod. Let's go, this place sucks, Will said, with a shake of her head. Yeah, let's find a different casino, Jennifer said as she headed for the door. Yay, one with a bar, Jessica said with a smile. No way, Naruto said with a firm shake of his head. Oh, lighten up, Whiskers, Jessica told him. Fine. I can order drinks at the hotel for you, Naruto said, cause if Jessica was gonna get drunk, he would prefer it in the hotel room. Then let's go, Will said, as they all headed for the hotel. Natasha gave Will a knowing look and Will winked back at her. They all approached the hotel and went inside to check in. Hello sir, how can I help you? The man at the desk asked. Your biggest room on the top floor please. Money is no object, Naruto said, while handing the man $100 bill as a tip. The man's eyes widened in shock. Right away sir, he said, as he typed into a computer and soon handed Naruto a set of keys. My thanks, Naruto said with a nod before the large group headed for the elevators. Later on the top floor. Naruto and the girls opened the door to the room and saw the inside of it. Whoa. Now this is a room, Rogue said with a smile as they saw the room was first class. There's a bar. Jessica said happily as she went over to get a drink. I found a jacuzzi. Jennifer said from the balcony. Oh cool, a stereo system, Will said as she snapped her fingers and music soon started playing. What are these? Crystal asked while looking at two stripper poles off to one side. It's for entertaining Naruto, Natasha said. How exactly does it entertain him? Crystal asked curiously. Will gave a smile as she walked over and whispered into her ear, which caused her to turn beet red. I say we have a toast, Jessica said as she poured them all drinks. What exactly are we going to toast to? Shuri asked. To a fun night for one, Jennifer said as she and the others all took a drink from the bar. They all clinked their glasses together before they all drank. Wow, that's some strong stuff, Naruto said after he swallowed his drink. Oh, stop being such a wuss, Jessica said as she refilled his drink. I'll show you a wuss, Naruto said as he threw his head back and drank again. An hour later. Naruto and the girls were all having fun, drinking and talking. Hey, has Naruto ever been drunk before? Jessica asked as she and Will saw Naruto looking a bit tipsy. Will shook her head as she said, as far as I know, his alcohol tolerance is very high. Hey Whiskers, you feeling okay? Jennifer asked as she approached him. Naruto looked at Jennifer and smiled. I am now, my jade beauty, he said as he pulled her to him and into his lap when he sat down on a couch. Jennifer laughed at this and leaned into him as she trailed her finger under his chin. What do you want from me? She asked him with a sexy grin. Naruto grabbed her ass hard, which made her moan in surprise at how bold he was being. I want to funk you, he said bluntly. Jennifer smirked at this and leaned in more before Rogue pulled her off him. This was heard by everyone else, which surprised them all. Laura growled at seeing this as she smashed her bottle of liquor in her hands. Whoa, let's calm down, Will said as she placed her hand on Laura's shoulder. How we gonna handle this? We all want to take a turn, obviously, Colleen asked. Diddy placed her hand on her chin and thought before she snapped her fingers as she said, we could play spin the bottle and whoever it lands on is the order Naruto does it in. And once it lands on you, you leave the circle so it doesn't land on you again. A few weeks later. Naruto and Will were relaxing in their living room of their tower, with Cosmo laid out on the floor fast asleep. So the other girls are moving into the tower. Will asked Naruto as she looked over her book at him. Well, we have the spare rooms, so we might as well make use of them, Naruto said with a shrug as he played on this box one playing Assassin's Creed. Black Flag. That, and after that incident in Vegas, I think you owe them that much, Will said, with a giggle at the memory. I still say that they overreacted, what with banning us from Vegas for a year, Naruto said with a shrug. Well, I was wanting a more tropical vacation next time anyway, Will said with a smile. Didn't you get enough in Vegas? I'm still winded from it, Naruto said as he gave Will a slight shake of his head. Oh, stop it, you liar, Will said with a roll of her eyes, knowing he was exaggerating. Thank God Kurama made it so I shot blanks, Naruto said with a look of relief. I'm not that vindictive, Kurama said with his head laid on his paws and his eyes closed as he relaxed. That better not be permanent, Will said with a light glare at him over the top of her book. Naruto paused his game enough to raise his arms. Don't worry. When the time comes, I'm more than capable of knocking you and the other girls up, he told her, before he unpaused his game and continued playing it. Good, Will said with a smile at him before she resumed reading her book. Suddenly Naruto's phone rang and Naruto answered it after pausing his game again. "What's up, Tony?" he asked while putting him on speaker. "We have a situation that requires the Avengers," Tony said in a worried tone. "What's wrong?" Will asked. "We finally found Loki's scepter, but someone dangerous has it," Tony said. "Oh? And who would that be?" Naruto asked him. "Look at your TV, I'm sending an image," Tony said as a picture appeared on the screen. "Oh great," Will said with a sigh, recognizing the man from before. "Why the hell would Magneto want Loki's scepter?" Naruto asked. "And why is he young again?" Cosmo asked as he woke up and shook himself awake. "At this, he got some of your blood whiskers and he used it to make a youth serum," Tony said in a concerned tone. "Oh, that's just great," Naruto said as he threw his arms in the air. "Relax, it was only enough for him. So no repercussions beyond this," Tony said in a relieved tone. "How the hell did you get this information?" Will asked curiously. "One of Magneto's groupies showed up and told me so we could stop him from attempting to attack DC," Tony explained. "This must be over that facility that's making the cure," Naruto said with a scowl. "Bingo. He has mutants joining him because some assholes were using it as a weapon," Tony said, with what Naruto and Will could tell had a frown on his face. "Who would turn on Magneto?" Will asked curiously. "She said that her name was Raven Darkholm," Tony said. "Oh whoa, Mystique?" Will asked surprised while recognizing that name from Rogue and Kitty. "Yay, her. Apparently she got shot with the cure and Magneto abandoned her as he didn't see her as being of any more use to him," Tony told them. Naruto growled at this as abandoning a comrade was a pet peeve of his. "So what's the plan?" Cosmo asked as he stood up. "Meet us at the tower and we can go over a plan. We have about a week or so before Magneto will make his move," Tony said. "Be there soon," Naruto said as he and Will got up off their respective couch. Avengers Tower. Naruto and Will finally arrived at the tower in their hero outfits, with Cosmo following by floating. "Still not used to that," Tony said while looking at Cosmo. "Who is this? A friend of yours?" Thor asked, looking at Cosmo curiously. "I am called Cosmo." "Nice to meet you," Cosmo thought at everyone who hadn't met him yet. "Well, this is new," Bruce said with a raised eyebrow. "Telepathic dogs, now I've seen everything," Clint said with a shake of his head. "Wait until you meet Rocket," Naruto said snickering as Cosmo smiled thinking this was funny. "This a new teammate Stark?" Thor asked him. Tony thought about this. "Well, he is pretty useful," he said with a shrug. "I'll say he is," Steve said with a nod, remembering how he helped free Bucky. Natasha approached and pet Cosmo on his head before she scratched one of his ears. "Any other new recruits?" Thor asked curiously as he had been off Earth for a while. "Ask Ninja Boy," Tony asked as he pressed a button and holographic images of all the friends Naruto made on Earth appeared. "Why is it mostly females?" Thor asked Naruto with a curious look. "Because Ninja Boy is a horn dog," Tony said with a knowing smirk at Naruto. "Okay, who the hell told you?" Naruto asked with a glare. "Did you really think you and your girls going all hangover on Vegas wouldn't get around?" Tony asked with a grin as he crossed his arms. Naruto turned into a demon dog. Thor asked in shocked surprise. "Why am I just hearing about this?" Naruto groaned at this as he slapped his head. "Never change, big man," Tony said with a smile as he patted Thor on his shoulder. "Okay, moving on. I'm glad you brought Cosmo, since we need him to make sure Miss Darkholm is telling the truth," Steve said with his arms crossed. "Lead the way, Mr. Rogers," Cosmo said before he followed Steve into another room. "I'll go too," Naruto said as he followed them. "Looking to recruit her to your club too?" Tony asked with a teasing grin. Naruto threw a kunai at Tony in response as he left. "Hey, watch it, Scorpion," Tony yelled out as he dodged a throw. "Do you think that's an insult?" "If anything, he will take that as a compliment," Will said with a roll of her eyes at Tony. Interrogation room, Avengers Tower. Naruto, Will, Steve and Cosmo entered the room and saw a woman who had black hair and sea green eyes and she was wearing what looked like a business suit. "Nice look," Will said as she sat down at the table while Naruto and Steve leaned against the wall as Cosmo sat down next to them. "Why the normal look?" Naruto asked her curiously. "I lost my powers," Mystique said with a scowl as she turned her head away. "How?" Naruto asked with a frown as he knew mutants felt a real connection to their powers. "The cure the government made for mutants," Mystique growled out as she said cure like it was a poison. "A cure?" Steve asked with a raised eyebrow. "Bullshit. That's not a cure, it's a funking disgrace," Naruto said with a look of anger on his face. Leave it to the government to pull shit like this, Will said, slamming her fist on the table, with fury in her eyes. So what exactly happened, Miss Darkholme? Cosmo asked her. Mystique was quite surprised at hearing Cosmo speak telepathically, as she never knew animals with powers before. Magneto freed me and some other mutants from a prisoner transport, she said. And let me guess, they shot you with this cure, Naruto said, as he walked over and leaned on the back of the chair next to Will. Yes. They were trying to shoot Magneto, and I saved him, Mystique said with a scowl, placing her arms on the table. And then he abandoned you, didn't he? Naruto asked her, as he sat down in the chair. Mystique nodded at this. I then decided to come here to tell you his plan, she said. Talk about a mean streak, Will said, leaning back in the chair with a smile as she crossed her arms. Mystique shrugged her shoulders. Well, like they say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, she said with her own smile. So, what's Magneto's plan? Steve asked her, as he pushed himself off the wall and walked over. Mystique then brought out a file and opened it, showing information on the cure. Naruto read the file, and he scowled. A kid is the cure? He asked her, looking up from a photo of a young boy. Mystique nodded at this. Apparently he's a mutant that can turn off mutant powers by being near other mutants, she said. Whoa, that's quite a power, Will said, with both eyebrows raised. Mystique nodded at this. His plan is to attack the base where they are keeping the boy, and… she said with a frown. Naruto's eyes slitted, as he had an idea of what Magneto was planning to do. Okay, Magneto is on my kill list, Will growled out, as the lights flickered. So long as I get dibs on him first, he's all yours after I'm through with him, Naruto said with a growl. He has an army of mutants who want the cure destroyed, Mystique said. Do you know what their powers are? Steve asked her, as he leaned on the end of the table. I know who his heavy hitters are, Mystique said, as she pulled out another file. Naruto and Will pulled the file over and opened it as they looked it over. Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Juggernaut, Pyro, Sabretooth and Toad, Naruto said. Before he attacks, he's on his way to a military base to free his other daughter, Mystique said, pointing out a picture of a woman with a green outfit similar to Scarlet Witch. Polaris. Whoa, she actually has her dad's powers. Will asked in surprise. She actually has the potential to beat Magneto. Why do you think he stole your blood to make a youth serum and stole that scepter? Mystique asked, looking at Naruto. Naruto nodded and looked at Cosmo with a questioning look. She's telling the truth, Cosmo said with a nod. Okay, let's head for this base and intercept Magneto, Will said, as she got up and headed for the door. We should save Polaris too, Naruto said, as he got up and approached Mystique before he channeled some chakra and touched her shoulder. Mystique gasped as her skin turned blue and her hair turned red, and she knew if she looked in a mirror, her eyes would be yellow again. You can undo the cure? Will asked him with a raised eyebrow in curiosity. It was just a hunch, Naruto said with a smile, shrugging his shoulders. Mystique grabbed Naruto's hand and looked at him. Thank you, she said with a smile. No problem. Your powers are yours, and nobody has the right to take it from you, Naruto said, patting her on the shoulder with a grin. Mystique nodded and got up from her chair before taking off her clothes. I'm gonna help you take Magneto out, she said with a determined look as they all left the interrogation room. You think we should tell the X-Men? Cause you know if Logan finds out he missed a chance to fight against Sabretooth, he'll be angry 6 ways till Sunday, Will said. Yay. I'll call them and have them set up a perimeter at that facility where that kid is, Naruto said, as they entered the lounge area of Avengers Tower where the other Avengers were chatting with each other. Tony looked at them as they entered and saw that Mystique was back to normal. Let me guess, a shinobi here cured the cure? He asked with a raised eyebrow. We need to go after Magneto now. I'll explain on the way, Naruto said. I already have a quintet ready, Natasha said as they all headed outside. She coming with? Clint asked, pointing a thumb at Mystique. Yay, and don't worry. I trust her, Naruto said with a smile. This because she's a retard? Tony asked with a smirk. What's that got to do with it? Will asked him as she crossed her arms with a raised eyebrow. Think about it, Sparky. You, Nad and now her, Tony said, counting off how many retards he saw in the room. Bruce chuckled at this. He's not wrong, Naruto, he said with a shrug. Careful, Wanda is a retard, Mystique said with a smirk. This made Tony laugh out loud. Let's just go already, Naruto said, pouting slightly as they arrived outside. There's no shame in having a type, Thor said, as he laughed while slapping Naruto on the back. Cosmo, call the X-Men and brief them, Naruto said, ignoring Thor as they all got on the quintet. Whoa, this must be bad if you're calling in backup, Tony said, as he sat down. I'll explain on the way, Naruto said, as they took off with Natasha driving. One explanation later. Naruto had just finished explaining the situation to the rest of the team. The FFT, cure. What a bunch of crap, this is just a power play by the government against all mutants, Tony said, with a hard look on his face. Wonder if Beast raised hell with the government. Since isn't he working with them as a diplomat? Will asked curiously. Not anymore. Apparently, when he found out about the government using it as a weapon, here is I, Naruto said, holding up his phone with a news article on it. Good. I hope that hurt those assholes, publicity-wise, Will said with a scowl as she leaned back in her chair. Are you sure you're not a mutant? Tony asked curiously, as he could see this whole cure thing really pissed her off. No, I'm not. But this is pretty much forcing people to confirm, or they take what makes you unique away, Will said. We will be at the base soon, Natasha said, as she pointed out a big military base in the mountains of Siberia. Looks like Magneto is close, Brew said, seeing a small army of mutants approaching the base. Okay everyone, we are gonna split up. Naruto, Will, Mystique, Natasha, Cosmo and Clint, you head inside to find Polaris to free her and hopefully convince her to join our side. The rest of us will try to keep Magneto busy, Steve said, as they got close and the back door opened over Magneto's small army. Just remember, Steve and Tony, Magneto might use your shield and armor against us, Will told them. Ha. I'm using my new platinum armor, so let's see him try, Tony said with a smirk. As for my shield, I will be careful, Steve said. Bruce got up and grew into the Hulk before he jumped down towards Juggernaut and slammed into him with a roar. Hulk smash. Hulk roared out as he punched Juggernaut back. My money is on Jolly Green, Tony said as he took off and flew down along with Thor. The battle. Thor yelled as he slammed his hammer on the ground, making a lot of the mutants stumble. Steve jumped down and slammed his shield into a mutant's face. Okay, follow me, Naruto said as the quintet was soon above the base. Right behind you, babe, Will said as she flew after him. Cosmo nodded and floated after Naruto. Naruto, Will and Cosmo approached the ground and saw some soldiers approaching them, guns ready. Relax, we are here to help. Where is Polaris? Naruto asked them. Not happening, freak, a soldier yelled as he fired at Naruto. Cosmo made a shield around him, Naruto and Will before he growled as his eyes lit up. Sleep, he yelled as a pulse of psychic energy engulfed the base, making all the soldiers stop in their tracks and fall to the floor asleep. Mystique, Clint and Natasha looked at this as they exited the landed Quinjet. Clint whistled at this and looked at Cosmo. Good dog, he said, impressed before patting Cosmo on the head. I took the information from them. Follow me, Cosmo said before running inside the base with the rest of them close behind him. Inside the base. Cosmo was leading them down a hall and soon they approached a room which had what looked like cells. There were also some guards and what looked like a scientist. Before the guards could react, Will was instantly behind them and they fell to the ground, knocked out. Geez kid, you're making me and Nat feel inadequate, Clint said as he barely got his bow up before Will took care of it. Will smiled at this and gave him a thumbs up. Naruto approached the scientist and glared at him. One chance, talker, my dog rips it out of you, he said, with Cosmo growling at him. What do you want to know? The scientist asked in fear. Who are these prisoners? Natasha asked, pointing out the 4 closed cells. One is Polaris and the other 3. The scientist paused. Cosmo's eyes glowed and he looked confused. What's a variant? He asked curiously. The scientist gulped at this. It's a person from a different timeline. See, recently my work has led to me finding a way to bring people from other timelines here, he said, while sweating slightly. What's the catch? Will asked with a frown, folding her arms. I haven't figured out how to do it without destroying their Tameli, he was saying, before Naruto slugged him hard in the face, sending him to the ground with a broken nose. We should let them out, Will said, as she held up her hand and let out a spark. Wait, what if they're bad guys or something? Clint asked her. They are all heroes, from what I can read from their minds. Though one is a bit strange, Cosmo said, with a curious tilt of his head. Strange how? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. She has multiple voices in her head, Cosmo said. Oh great, a crazy person, Mystique said with a sigh as the first door opened. They saw it was a female who was wearing a white, black and red themed spider-like suit with a hood up over her head. This is a variant. She doesn't look familiar, Clint said, looking at the spider-themed heroine. Maybe she's a variant of a future hero in our timeline, Naruto said with a shrug. The woman nodded at this. Call me Ghost Spider, she said to them. The second door then opened to reveal another female, whose suit was a mix of black and white with a dark red cape and she was wielding a scythe. Oh lord, I can already feel a headache coming, Mystique said with an annoyed look on her face at this heroine. Will looked at this heroine and sighed. Let me guess, you're related to Deadpool? She asked as she had heard stories of him from Rouge and Kitty. Nodded and one read. Call me Deathpool, the heroine said as she then pulled her scythe out and pointed it at Naruto. You checking me out, Whiskers? she asked, with a tilt of her head. Not particularly, Naruto said, not blinking at the scythe pointed at him. I can tell you're lying, my name is on the harem list. Deathpool said with a smug tone, as she struck a pose. She then gave a thumbs up in the air, as she yelled out cheerfully, thanks Mr. Author-san. Let's just open these last 2 cells already, Natasha said, rolling her eyes at seeing this. The 3rd cell opened, and everyone's eyes widened in surprise at what they saw. Well, it looks like Steve is in for a surprise, Naruto said, crossing his arms. I'll say, Clint said with a nod. They saw that it was a woman who was in a familiar uniform. She was in a uniform similar to Steve's, but with a Union Jack on it, along with a shield that had a Union Jack in the middle. Captain Carter, I assume? Natasha asked the woman, as she left her cell. If you're letting me out of here, you may call me Peggy, she said with a grateful nod. They then felt the base shake, causing a few cracks to appear and some rubble to fall. Looks like Magneto is here, Will said. We can go up and help if you want, Ghost Spider said. That is most appreciated, Naruto said with a smile. I'll do it for a date later, Whiskers Deathpool said. Fine, just go. Steve will probably need help, Naruto said, waving his hand at her. This made Peggy pause and her eyes to widen. Steve is here? She asked. Yay, and in this timeline he's Captain America. Now get up there and save your man, Will said with a smile, while giving Peggy a thumbs up. Peggy picked up her shield and a sword before she nodded as she led Ghost Spider and Deathpool upstairs. Okay, final cell, Will said, as she snapped her fingers and the cell opened. Inside was a woman who had green hair and eyes. She was wearing a green version of Magneto's suit with a green cape and a green hapuri. Who are you? She asked them nervously. This is Magneto's kid. She seems like a sweetheart to me, Naruto asked Mystique, making said woman blush. Yes, she's a gentle soul, Mystique said with a smile. Mystique? Did my father send you? She asked her curiously. Yes. Polaris, right? Naruto asked her as she stepped out of the room. That's what my father calls me. Call me Lorna, she said to him. Not a big fan of your dad? Will asked her with a raised eyebrow while crossing her arms. He cares about mutants, but he takes his hate for humans too far, Lorna said with a frown. Yay, and you're not gonna like his plan, Will said as she approached her. One explanation later. Polaris had a look of shock and terror at what she'd just learned. He wants to kill a child? She asked in a whisper as she leaned against a wall. We won't let that happen, don't worry, Naruto said reassuringly. The metal objects in the room suddenly started to shake. That's it. I am done with that monster. Lorna yelled out as she pointed her hand at the roof as the roof tore open before she flew out. Clint whistled at this as he looked up at the hole Lorna made. That kid sure has a temper, he said. I think she's a pacifist that finally found her limit, Naruto said before he jumped through the hole, with everyone else following after him. Earlier, with Steve. Steve was fighting some mutants while blocking with his shield when his shield went flying out of his hands. I was hoping you would stay out of this, Mr. Rogers, Magneto said as the shield floated towards his extended hand while his other hand held Loki's scepter. Why are you trying to stop me from rescuing my daughter? He asked. Don't give me that. You only want a powerful ally so you can kill that kid easily, Tony said as he flew over and hovered over Steve. What is he talking about, father? Wanda asked with a slight edge in her voice as she walked over with a red glow in her hands, with her brother soon arriving in a blur. You didn't tell your own kids your plan. Oh, that's just great parenting skills, Tony said, clapping his hands mockingly. This vile fiend is planning on killing the child who is the source of the mutant cure, Thor said, landing next to Steve and holding his hammer at the ready. Pietro scowled at this and glared at his father. They are lying, they have no proof, Magneto said with a scowl. All this came from Miss Darkholm's mouth, Steve said, returning the scowl. Mystique. I thought that you said she died, Wanda said. She lost her powers to their cure, so she may as well be dead, Magneto said, waving his hand dismissively. Wow, nice loyalty, Tony said mockingly. Magneto growled as he aimed Loki's staff at Tony and fired while sending Cap's shield at Steve, slamming him to the ground trapped. Magneto aimed the staff at Steve's face and before he could fire another shield slammed into his face, sending him to the ground. The shield bounced back to Peggy, who caught it and jumped in front of Steve to block him from Magneto's sight while pointing her sword at Magneto. Peggy? Steve asked, surprised as he got up and placed his shield back on his arm. Not the one you know, but close enough, Deathpool said as she ran past them and swung her scythe at Pyro, destroying his flamethrowers. Since when does Deadpool have a rack? Tony asked in surprise. Since he had a kid with death, smartest, Deathpool yelled as she kneed Pyro in the crotch, making every male watching flinch before covering their own manhood in reflex. Oh god, he's breeding, Tony groaned out while putting his hand on his faceplate in annoyance. Ghost Spider then swung by and webbed Pyro to the floor. Huh, you knew? Tony asked her curiously. Explain later, let's deal with him first, Ghost Spider said as Magneto got up with a look of anger on his face. Before Magneto could move, the gate to the base flew off and a lot of metal debris flew around, showing that Lorna was here. Magneto smiled at this, but before he could say anything, Lorna yelled and sent the debris at him. You dare attack your father? He asked with a scowl as he made the debris stop. I will attack anyone who plans the death of a child, Lorna growled out with a hate-filled glare aimed at him. Looks like you're out 3 kids now, metal boy. Are you ready to give up yet? Tony asked, aiming his repulsors at him. Magneto growled as he raised Loki's staff and sent out a wave of energy which sent them all flying. We are leaving now. We will end this cure, no matter what. He yelled to his men as they all retreated. Everyone on his side nodded as they followed him. As they left, the Avengers and their new allies groaned as they got up. Anyone get the license plate of that bus that ran me over? Deathpool asked, holding her head in pain. Steve got up and approached Peggy. You okay? He asked her. Peggy nodded and got up. Don't worry about me. In my timeline, I took the serum. So anything you can handle, I can too, she said with a smile. Timeline? Steve asked with a curious look. Oh great, the government is messing with timelines now, Tony groaned, opening his face plate up so he could pinch the bridge of his nose in annoyance. Hulk growled as he got up, not happy that his fight with Juggernaut was interrupted. Hulk smash puny stone helmet man. He said, slamming his fist into his hand. Naruto and the rest soon ran over. Magneto got away? He asked. The rest of them nodded at this. What the hell is that staff anyway? Will asked, seeing the damage it did to the area. It's called the Mind Stone, one of the Infinity Stones. It's similar to the Tesseract, which is the Space Stone, Thor said. And how exactly do you know what the staff and Tesseract are holding inside them, Point Break? Tony asked with a raised eyebrow. As Prince of Asgard, I am required to know about all the treasures in the vault, Thor said, while crossing his arms. Wait, this is that powerful? Naruto asked with wide eyes. Looks like you will have to go all out, Babe Will said to him. He will head for the facility in New York next, Wanda said, folding her arms, while Pietro nodded in agreement with his sister. Then let's make sure he has a problem getting to that facility, Ghost Spider said, punching her fist into her palm. Already on that. Sage called in the X-Men to wait for him there, Natasha said with a smirk while crossing her arms. Ooh, a man that thinks ahead. I like the Deathpool said, walking over to Naruto and slung her arm over his shoulder. Naruto shrugged her arm off and looked at everyone. We need to get to that facility to back up the X-Men, and fast, he said urgently. Steve and Peggy both nodded in agreement at this. Come on, let's head back to the Quinjet, then fly to the facility, Clint said as he turned around to walk back to where they'd landed the Quinjet. No need, I'll just bring it here, Lorna said as she raised her hands up and everyone saw the Quinjet rising up from where it was before she brought it over to them and placed it a few meters from them. Okay, I guess that works too, Clint said with a shrug before they all boarded the Quinjet with Natasha sitting in the driver's seat again. A few moments later, they had risen into the air and turned in the direction the facility was before blasting off. As they were flying for the facility, Tony looked at Steve and Peggy. Okay, I have to ask, if both of you have the rank of captain, then who's gonna be the leader of this team? He asked them. Everyone else looked at them with raised eyebrows, also curious about who the leader of the team would be. Both Steve and Peggy looked at each other for a few minutes. Steve, this is your team and you know them best. So, I'll follow your lead, Peggy said as she gave him a smile. Steve smiled at this and nodded. Dang, and I was gonna sell tickets to your fight, Tony said with a smile. Peggy shook her head at this. Howard's kid? She asked Steve with a raised eyebrow. Steve nodded at this while crossing his arms. Are you sure we can trust those two? Thor asked, looking at Wanda and Pietro. Naruto nodded his head as he said yes. And if they try anything, I'm sure that Will can handle it. Will smirked as she made lightning appear on her hands to get the point across. Wanda frowned at this. All we wanted was to be left alone. But mutants cause nothing but problems, she said. Bullshit, Naruto said, getting her, Lorna and Pietro's attention. Yay. Mutants are people who make choices, like everyone else, Will said. Indeed, well said, Thor said with a nod. We are coming up on New York, so get ready, Natasha said. My father won't stop, no matter what. You may have to kill him, Wanda said with a frown. He has it coming, Naruto said with a scowl, punching his fist into his palm. Wanda nodded at this, but looked sad. Will frowned at this, as she could tell Wanda was conflicted. Hey, don't worry. If we can stop him without killing him, we will, she said. Naruto looked at Will with a raised eyebrow, but she pointed at Wanda and Naruto saw she looked sad and very conflicted. Damn it, he thought, realizing how Wanda must be feeling. He then put his hand on Wanda's shoulder. Will's right. I promise I won't kill him, he said reassuringly. Wanda looked at Naruto, surprised but smiled lightly and nodded thanking him. Doesn't mean you can't hurt him, Lorna said with a scowl. Wow, you have a mean streak, don't you, Emerald Eyes? Deathpool said, sitting in a chair where she was sharpening her scythe. Oh, trust me, I'll hurt him for ya. I might break his nose or something for not being a great father, Naruto told her with his own scowl. Good. Hopefully you can keep up, Pietro said with a smile. New York facility. The X-Men were guarding the front doors of the facility. The X-Men that showed up were Logan, Laura, Beast, Rogue, Kitty, Nightcrawler, Iceman, Jean, Storm, Scott and Gambit. Storm was in the air and she noticed that the Golden Gate Bridge had ripped itself off and was floating towards the facility. Magneto is coming. She yelled to the rest of the team down below before floating down to them. Are you all ready? Logan asked the team. Laura unsheathed her claws. You bet, Pops, she said with a savage grin. Man, you've got more energy since Vegas, Kitty said with a giggle. Logan scowled at this. Remind me to have whiskers fixed after this, he said. The hell you will. Laura, Rogue and Kitty yelled at him, a look of righteous feminine fury in their eyes. Logan rolled his eyes at this. He wasn't that good, was he? Storm asked Rogue curiously. Rouge smiled at this. He handled a whole group of us on his own and didn't get winded sugar, she told her. Storm's eyes widened at this as she lightly blushed. Want us to set you up on a date? Kitty asked with a smile. Yay, you look about his type, Laura said as she inspected Storm. Why do I feel like your prey when you do that? Storm asked her uneasily. Well, she is bi, Rouge said with a smile. Logan coughed at this, surprised to hear it. Oh, lighten up, Pops, Laura said. Focus, he's here. Scott yelled as the bridge floated over the entrance to the facility. The gates to the facility burst open as Juggernaut slammed through it with an army of mutants behind him, with Magneto leading them and Loki's staff glowing. This is your only chance, get out of our way. I don't want to spill any mutant blood, Magneto said. Not happening, asshole. Laura yelled at him. Logan smirked at this. You heard her, bub. You want the kid, you go through us, he said. They then heard the roar of an engine as a Quinjet appeared over them and Naruto, Will, Cosmo, the Avengers, Wanda, Lorna, Pietro, Ghost Spider, Mystique and Deathpool jumped down from the jet. Since when did Wade change his look? Logan asked with a raised eyebrow upon seeing Deathpool. I'm his daughter, Jackman. Deathpool yelled as she pulled her scythe out before twirling it a few times. Who the hell had his kid? Scott asked bewildered. Well, my name has a hint, Deadeye, Deathpool said. This silenced everyone as they looked at her in shock. You're kidding, right? Naruto asked, as even for him, the idea of Death having a kid was far-fetched. Nope. My daddy stole mom from some stalker of hers, they got nasty, and I'm the result, Deathpool said, as she spread her arms out and gave a bow. Well, that's a lovely image, Gambit said. Kitty looked at Steve before looking at Peggy, then back to Steve. Mr. Rogers, is this woman your sister or something? She asked him. Nope, Steve said with a shake of his head. Multiverse, Peggy said, keeping it simple. That's a thing? Gambit asked with wide eyes. Less talking, more fighting, Jiraiya Jr. Deathpool yelled as she summoned her scythe. Naruto laughed at this, but paused. Wait, how do you know Jiraiya? He asked her. Author Sand and his co-writer told me, Deathpool said casually. Yay, definitely Wade's kid. She speaks crazy like him, Logan said, shaking his head slightly. Hey. My mother had me tested. Deathpool yelled, sounding insulted. Did you pass? Will asked with a raised eyebrow. Not important, future harem sister. Deathpool said, waving her hand in the air. Only you would attract the crazy kid, Logan said to Naruto. Magneto glared at his children as they stood with the Avengers and the X-Men. You would fight against me? He asked them. Wanda, Lorna and Pietro glared at Magneto and didn't flinch. Magneto glared and pointed Loki's staff at them. Attack. Get in there and kill their cure. He yelled out. His army of mutants roared as they charged, with Juggernaut, Sabretooth, Toad and Pyro leading the charge. Hulk roared as he charged at Juggernaut, wanting to finish what they started. Iceman met Pyro and attacked him as they started to fight. Toad jumped at Storm, who avoided him by floating backwards, with Toad following after her. Sabretooth charged at Logan, but Laura blocked him. Out of my way, half pint, he growled as he swung his claws at her. Laura ducked and backflipped while slashing at his face with her foot claw, making Sabretooth roar in pain as he put his hand where she'd cut him. This is my fight, kid, Logan said, walking over. Enough of the macho crap, Pops. I'm helping you, so either get with it or stand there and watch as I cut him into slabs of beef, Laura said, giving Logan a scowl. Sabretooth growled at this. Logan has a kid, huh? I'll enjoy ripping you in half girly, he growled. Big talk bub. Let's see you back it up, Laura said. Definitely your kid, Sabretooth growled as he charged at Logan and Laura. Yay, I'm so proud, Logan said with a smirk as he and Laura ran towards him. Naruto looked up and saw Storm trying to make a lightning storm to slow down Magneto's army. He then looked at Will. Will, help Storm power up her attack, he said before he turned and slugged a mutant in the face who tried to sneak up on him. Will smiled as she flew up to help Storm as she unleashed a massive amount of lightning which she and Storm fired at the army of mutants. Magneto growled and aimed Loki's scepter at Will, but before he could fire it, the staff was gone. He then saw Pietro nearby with the staff in his hands. You didn't see that coming? He asked with a smirk as he twirled the staff. Before Magneto could respond, he was blasted by Wanda with a burst of her chaos energy, sending him flying into the air. Lorna then flew up. Batter up, Dad, she said with a growl and slammed a tank into him, sending him into the ground. Naruto smirked at this. Way to make me look bad, you three, he said as he crossed his arms. Peggy and Steve were fighting Pyro, slowly making their way to him thanks to their shields. Iceman saw this and made a slide for them so they could get above him. Cosmo was using his telepathy to knock out some mutants and even had some of them fight their own allies. Steve used the slide to get above Pyro and used his shield to block his flames. Before Pyro could react, Peggy threw her shield at his arms and destroyed his flamethrowers, giving Steve the opening to slam his shield down on his face, knocking him out. Toad was fighting Nightcrawler as he tried to avoid Storm's lightning and was having trouble doing so. He shot his tongue at Will, who he saw was just floating in the air. Will grabbed his tongue as she glared at Toad and lit him up with lightning, shocking him for a bit before he was knocked out. The only tongue I want to touch me is my boyfriend's, thank you very much, she said, before letting go and flew off to fight a small group of Magneto's mutant army. Juggernaut and Hulk were still fighting and neither were giving an inch. Ghost Spider webbed up Juggernaut so he was slowed down. Thor then slammed down and slammed his hammer into Juggernaut's helmet. Juggernaut's helmet was gone now and Deathpool flashed forward and sliced his head off. Little much, don't you think? Scott asked, with Jean nodding in agreement. Oh please, he's got a body count higher than my pops. So shut the hell up, Boy Scout. I swear, you're more boring than Superman. Deathpool yelled before she ran off to fight some more mutants. Looks like Magneto's army is getting cold feet, Mystique said as she knocked one of the enemy mutants out as she saw a bunch starting to flee. Most people like this are just cowards and just want to vent, Beast said with a shrug. The tank Magneto was slammed by suddenly shattered as it formed into blades which he sent at Wanda, Lorna and Pietro. Naruto was instantly in front of them and glared at Magneto with his Rinnegan active. Almighty push, he said as the blades were stopped and destroyed from the force. This is how you treat your kids, huh? Naruto said as he folded his arms. Magneto glared at Naruto and his children who were behind him. I have no children, he growled out as he held out his arms and made even more blades from the metal nearby. Wanda hesitated hearing this and frowned as she slightly cried a bit. In a flash of yellow light, Naruto was in front of Magneto and slammed his fist into Magneto's chest, stabbing him with something. Magneto paused as the blades he made fell. He then looked down and saw a syringe in his chest. Game over, asshole, Naruto said as he slugged him in the face, knocking him out. You used the cure on him? Pietro asked, surprised that Naruto was that cold-blooded. It ended this before it could get worse. We don't need him hurting anyone else anymore, Naruto said to him. Good, as this is worse than killing him, Lorna said with a nod. Wanda approached Naruto and nodded at him. Thank you for keeping your promise, she said, as this in her eyes was better than killing him. Naruto nodded at Wanda, patting her on the shoulder. Looks like the cleanup crew is here, Natasha said, as some helicarriers were finally here and some agents were coming down. That's my K to leave, but I'll look you up, cutie. Deathpool said as she slapped Naruto on the ass and disappeared in a warp. Geez, that chick gives me a headache, Clint said as he rubbed his forehead. I like her, she seems fun, Will said with a grin. You would, Naruto said with a smile, as he knew Will liked having friends that kept things interesting. I'm out of here too, Ghost Spider said, waving her hand at them. Here, Naruto said, handing her a business card. It's for my restaurant, if you ever need help, he said. Ghost Spider looked at the card and nodded at Naruto before she left. You gonna go too? Steve asked Peggy. Peggy smiled at Steve and shook her head. You're not getting rid of me that easily. And besides, I believe we never had that dance, did we, she said to him. Steve smiled and nodded his head at her. I give them about a month before they are married, Tony said with a smile. Oh, stop being an idiot. I give them a week, Will said with a smile of her own, making Tony laugh. Let's head home before the press shows up, Naruto said, getting nods from everyone. You three gonna be okay? Will asked Wanda, Lorna and Pietro. They can come with us. The professor's door is open to all mutants, Scott said with a smile at them. The three siblings blinked at this before they smiled and nodded. Naruto and the rest of the team all took off, leaving Magneto and his men to be locked up by the government while they took Loki's scepter with them. Sometime later, at Avengers Tower. Naruto, Will, Thor, Tony, Clint, Natasha, Bruce, Steve and Peggy were standing around a table with Loki's scepter placed on it while they chatted with Fury on a video call. According to my sources, Magneto was able to get his hands on the scepter by stealing it from some Hydra agents, Fury said with a frown. Yeah, well, we are gonna hide it since you idiots are on our shit list, Will said as she gave him a glare with her arms crossed. Look, I had no idea about them using the cure as a weep, Fury was saying before he got interrupted. Save it, Fury. We are still allies, but don't insult my intelligence, Naruto said with a glare as he ended the call. What do we do with the stone inside the scepter? Tony asked. Well, I'm guessing you can't hide it, Thor, since you're already dealing with the Tesseract. Will asked. Indeed, along with the reality stone, Thor said. Whoa, say what? Naruto asked, surprised at what he just heard. Indeed. You remember that incident with the Dark Elves in London? Thor asked his fellow Avengers. Everyone nodded at this, as they did indeed recall hearing about this. Well, the Dark Elves tried using the reality stone to take over all realms, Thor said. Okay, so we have been dealing with 3 of these stones so far, within a year? Will asked. Poor Naruto said, remembering the Power Stone when dealing with Ronin with the Guardians. Yeah, but that was just you, babe, Will said. It's still not good if 4 stones are being active so close to each other, Naruto said, with a hard frown on his face. What are the other 2? Steve asked curiously. Yes. If we know where those are, we could plan ahead in case something happens, Peggy said with a thoughtful look. Well, there's the Time Stone and the Soul Stone, Thor said, rubbing his chin. And where are they? Natasha asked. No idea, I'm afraid, Thor said with a shrug. Well, just in case any of us encounter either of these, we will contact each other right away, Naruto said. Good idea. It's obvious something may be happening with the stones if they are activating one after the other, Thor said with a nod. If that's the case, then we should be making more allies, Bruce said with a frown. Indeed. We are making a new Avengers base, so we should recruit more Avengers, Tony said with a nod of agreement. Any recommendations? Clint asked. Well, young Naruto and Will have been encountering more potential allies than us, Thor said, looking over at them. I agree. Whiskers and Sparky are our talent scouts, Tony said with a smile. Naruto snorted at this. This better include a Ray Stark, he said. Yay, I want a Caribbean cruise. Will said. I have several yachts, take your pick, Sparky, Tony said with a shrug. Done. Will said with a smile. Later. Naruto and Will were getting ready to leave. So, where are we gonna hide the Mind Stone? Will asked. I was thinking of asking Chala to hide it, Naruto said. Oh, good. I wanted to meet this guy, he seemed cool, Will said with a smile. That, and you miss Shuri and Okoye too, Naruto said with a smile as he and Will disappeared in a flash of yellow light. While nearby, Steve and Peggy were comparing their universes. Wait, so Howard built a suit of armor for me powered by the Tesseract since I didn't take Erskine's formula and it was called the Hydra Stomper? Steve asked in surprise. Peggy nodded with a smile. Indeed, and we accomplished many missions together, she said. And the only thing me and my Peggy ever did was attack Hydra's final base, Steve said. Well, at least that's still the same, as me and my Steve did the same thing, even though I'd thought he was dead before attacking the castle, when Hydra really just wanted the Tesseract so they could use it to open some kind of wormhole, Peggy said with a frown. So, what happened after you arrived in modern times? Steve asked curiously. Same as you, attack on New York. Only there, my world suddenly started deteriorating and next thing I know, I am in a cell, Peggy said with a sad look, not knowing what happened to everyone in her world. That scientist said that because of his machine that brought you and the other 2 here, your timelines were destroyed, Natasha said with a frown. So? I have nowhere to go, Peggy said with a downcast look. No, you have me. I mean, if you want, Steve said nervously, not wanting to seem rude. Peggy smiled at this and nodded. Though, we will have to explain why there's 2 Peggys, along with one being a super soldier like you, Cap, Bruce said. I'm sure that we'll come up with something, Steve said with a shrug. With Naruto. Naruto and Will appeared in a Wakandan lab and in an instant, Shuri tackled Naruto and Will into a hug. Hey Shuri, Naruto said with a chuckle as he patted her on the head. I hope you're not here to sweep my sister off to destroy a hotel room again, Chalice said, alerting them that he was here too. Oh, so you know about that? Naruto asked with a nervous chuckle as he rubbed his arm in worry. Indeed. You're lucky I didn't tell my parents that you. Corrupted my sister, Chala said with a chuckle as he teased his sister. Brother. Shuri said with a blush. Hey, your sister was a freak within 10 minutes, so don't blame us, Will said, crossing her arms with a huff. Ah, Miss Vandam, it's nice to finally meet you, Chala said, giving her a welcoming smile. So, what brings you two here? Shuri asked with a smile. Naruto took the Mind Stone out of his pocket and showed it to them. What is this? Shuri asked as she leaned forward to get a closer look. Hope you're up to hear a story, Will said with a sigh, as she knew this whole Infinity Stone thing was gonna take a bit to explain. A few moments later, Naruto and Will had explained the situation. Something like this would definitely be safer locked up here in Wakanda, Chala said, rubbing his chin in thought. That's why we are here, Naruto said with a nod. Don't worry, Shuri, we can take you out on a date too, Will said with a smile. Well, don't worry, I'll take care of locking up the stone. You all have fun with Shuri, but try to have her home by morning, Chala said. No promises. She may want to be gone longer since she's quite stubborn, Naruto said with a chuckle. Don't I know it, my friend, Chala said with his own chuckle. I'm staying for a week. Let me go pack, Shuri said as she ran off. Right behind you, Will said with a smile. Just so you know, my father approves of you dating her. Just try not to make him a grandfather too soon, Chala said with a grin. Don't worry. I can choose when I am fertile, Naruto said. What about your mother? What are her thoughts about me being with Shuri? He then asked. Oh, she finds you quite perfect for Shuri. She actually has been training with me hand to hand lately since your trip to Vegas, Chala said. What, she wants to challenge you to be the next Black Panther? Naruto asked with a grin. Well, if she masters chakra like she wants, she could be one without the plant, Chala told him. She's been trying to do that? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. Indeed. So feel free to train her a bit, Chala said, clapping Naruto on his shoulder. Naruto nodded as he had no problem with this. A few minutes later, Shuri and Will returned ready to go. Okay, let's get going, Naruto said. Indeed, I want to see New York, Shuri said with a wide grin. Don't worry, we will have plenty of fun, Will said as she pinched Shuri's ass with a mischievous smile. Shuri jumped slightly at this before giving Will a playful look. Chala just shook his head at this with a light smile on his lips. See you later, your majesty, Naruto said as he gave a bow while smiling at Chala. Keep that stone under max security, Will said. Chala nodded at this as he agreed that the Mind Stone needed the best protection. Naruto grabbed onto the girl's shoulders before they disappeared in a flash of light. Naruto's restaurant. In a flash of light, Naruto, Will and Shuri were in his restaurant. So this is your restaurant, Shuri said with a grin as she looked around. Yup, you hungry? Naruto asked as he headed for the kitchen. Sure, I always wanted to try a burger, Shuri said as she sat down. Will smiled at this, but soon heard a knock on the doors, and when she looked she saw a woman their own age. She had blonde hair that was in a bob cut and she also had a pink streak in her hair. Will approached the door and opened it slightly. Sorry, we're closed, she said kindly. The woman frowned at this and pulled down her shirt slightly to show a familiar costume. Will's eyes widened at this. Ghost Spider? She asked. Well, outside of this the name is Gwen, the woman said, pulling her shirt back up. Come on in, Will said as she opened the door wider. Gwen nodded and went inside, with Will closing the door behind her. Naruto looked out from the kitchen and saw Will letting Gwen in. She's that spider chick, Will said as they walked over. Naruto nodded and looked at Gwen. You hungry? He asked her. Yay, you look like you have skipped a few meals, Shuri said with a frown, looking over Gwen's skinny form. Gwen nodded as she sat down next to Shuri. Will, get her some chips while I make her some food, Naruto said as he headed back into the kitchen while creating a shadow clone to help him. A few moments later, Naruto came out with a plate of burgers for everyone, along with a plate of fries. Gwen instantly took one and started to eat it. Later. Gwen was finally full and was smiling as she finished her drink before she gave a large belch while patting her belly. Glad you liked it, Naruto said with a chuckle. So, what brings you here? Will asked her curiously while leaning her head on her hand. I'm gonna guess since she's stuck in our timeline, so she needs a place to go, Shuri said as she knew the situation thanks to Will explaining everything. Gwen nodded at this. Yay. I tried looking up if I existed in this timeline and I don't, Gwen said with a small sad look. Does anyone you know have a version here? Naruto asked her. Gwen paused at this, but nodded. Yay, but he's younger than me. And I don't want to burden him since my version of him died because of me, she said with a frown. Naruto groaned at this, but nodded. Well, you can stay with us, he said. Yay, we have plenty of room in the penthouse, Will said. You sure I won't be a bother? Gwen asked with a peaked eyebrow. Of course not. You're our friend and I'm not letting you be homeless, Naruto said with a firm look. Gwen smiled at this and nodded. Thanks so much, she said. Let's head home, it's getting late, Will said as she looked at the clock and saw it was almost 10:30. Naruto nodded and touched his friends and in a flash of light they disappeared. Naruto's living room. Whoa, I think I left my burgers back at the restaurant, Gwen groaned as she sat down on the couch while holding her stomach with a slightly green face. Yay, that move takes some getting used to, Will said. Gwen nodded and soon composed herself before she saw Cosmo in front of her, sniffing her over. Hello Miss Stacy, Cosmo said, making Gwen jump in surprise. That's Cosmo. Don't worry, he's harmless, Naruto said with a smile. And don't worry, he respects privacy. Unless you're a villain, that is, Will said. Gwen nodded at this as she pet Cosmo, who wagged his tail happily. Okay, Will can show you to your room. I need a shower, Naruto said as he left. I get my own room? Gwen asked curiously as she got up to follow Will. Yup, just follow me, Will said with a smile at Gwen. Shuri was getting ready to follow them, but she noticed Naruto heading to the bathroom shirtless and she bit her lip at this and after a moment followed after Naruto. Cosmo saw her go and shook his head at this as he'd briefly read her mind to know what her intentions were. But Naruto was in the shower, letting the hot water pour on him and sighed in relief. A few moments later, he felt someone hug him from behind and jumped slightly in surprise. Shuri, what are you doing? Naruto asked, feeling her hug him and squish her teacup breast against his back. The next morning, Naruto was making breakfast with a smile on his face as Gwen entered the room wearing a white shirt and jeans. Hey Gwen, hungry? Naruto asked her as he filled a plate with pancakes and bacon. Gwen looked at Naruto for a moment before looking away with a blush on her cheeks. Yay, she said. What's wrong? Naruto asked with a tilt of his head. Babe, you're not wearing a shirt, Will said as she and Shuri entered the room. Naruto looked down and realized that he'd only put on his pants before entering the kitchen. Sorry Gwen. Here, eat up you three while I go track down a shirt, Naruto said with a sheepish grin as he left. Gwen subtly checked Naruto out as he left. But she saw that Will was looking at her with a teasing look. Sorry, she said quickly, knowing that Will was dating Naruto. Hey, it's fine. If you want to pursue him, go right ahead, Will said, waving her hand in the air. You're kidding, right? Gwen asked with a sudden blink in surprise. Nope. Heck, me and Shuri both had a wild night with Naruto last night, Will said with a smile. Shuri said with a nod as her mouth was full of pancakes. She had a small blush on her cheeks as she remembered everything that happened. Are harems a normal thing in this dimension? Gwen asked curiously as she composed herself. Before Will could answer, Cosmo ran into the room with his collar blinking. What's up, Cosmo? Will asked. I'm getting an alert from a friend of Naruto's in space, Cosmo said urgently. Stan, can you access his collar and give us a visual? Will asked. Cosmo's collar blinked and soon an image was on the video phone. Naruto is friends with a duck? Shuri asked curiously as they all saw a duck wearing a suit. Oh yay, I think Naruto mentioned this guy. Howard the Duck, right? Will asked. You're kidding, right? Gwen asked with a raised eyebrow. Where the hell is Naruto? We need some backup over here. Howard yelled as they could see in the background that the ship they were in was being attacked and shaking from the laser fire damage it took. Oh geez, Howard, why didn't you use the kunai I left you guys? Naruto asked with a deadpan look as he entered the room. The trash panda sold it for some scraps. Howard yelled. Don't call me that or I'm eating well tonight. They heard a voice yell out. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. Who'd he sell it to? He asked. That's not important now. Get over here as we need backup since yesterday. Howard yelled out. On my way, Naruto said as the video feed ended. He then nodded to Will and Shuri. You two up to help some friends of mine? He asked them. Shuri smiled at this and tapped her necklace, making her own Black Panther armor appear on her body. I'm game too. I want to meet these Guardians of the Galaxy, Will said with a grin as she stood up. Good. Go wake Nebula, we should take her too, Naruto said. Will nodded at this as she left to go get Nebula. You guys want me to help? Gwen asked curiously. Naruto shrugged his shoulders at her. Sure, the more the merrier, he said. Indeed, as your abilities will be most useful, Cosmo said with a nod. We should bring a heavy hitter with us, Shuri said, rubbing her chin. Any suggestions? Naruto asked as he knew Shuri had a tactical mind. Shuri said as she thought for a moment. Is Crystal free to help? She is the most versatile with her 4 elements, she said. You guys have an avatar? Gwen asked with a smirk. PFFT. Don't tell Crystal that joke. She's heard enough of that from Will, Naruto said with a smile. We should bring Jen too. She is the strongest here physically, Will said as she returned with Nebula. Naruto nodded at this. Good idea, he said. Minutes later. Naruto and the others were waiting for Crystal and Jennifer on the roof of their building. Suddenly in a warp, Crystal and Jennifer arrived, thanks to Lockjaw, who walked over and rubbed himself against Naruto and Will while giving them a doggy grin. "You interrupted us shopping, lover," Jennifer said as she put down some bags. "Sorry, Jen, but we need yours and Crystal's help with a mission," Naruto said. "We are more than happy to help. What's the situation?" Crystal asked him as she put her own bags down. "We need to go help some friends of mine in space," Naruto said as he looked at Lockjaw. "You up to helping us get there?" he asked the dog. Lockjaw barked at him and wagged his tail to show he was happy to help. "Who are the newbies?" Jennifer asked curiously, looking at Gwen and Shuri, who were in their hero outfits. "It's me, Jen," Shuri said as she made her helmet disappear. "And that's Gwen. She's staying with us now," Will said. Jennifer gave Gwen a teasing smile at this. "Has Naruto had sex with you yet?" she asked her suddenly. "Oh, of course not. We just met," Gwen said, glad that she was wearing her mask, otherwise everyone would see her face was blushing red. "Leave her alone, Jen. You're gonna scare her off and she doesn't have anywhere else to go," Naruto said with a frown. "Yay, we need to get moving," Nebula said with a scowl as she was worried about Gamora. Naruto nodded at this as he charged some sage chakra and made his aura cover Lockjaw, who felt where he was supposed to go thanks to Naruto, and in a warp they were gone. But the Guardians. The Guardians of the Galaxy were on a planet with a forest as they had just crashed their ship after being chased by the Sovereigns. "I can't believe you got us attacked like that," Quill yelled at Rocket as they stood next to the wrecked Milano. "And thanks to you, we had no way to summon Naruto," Howard said with a scowl. "I am Groot," Groot said with a nod. "Alright already. I get it," Rocket yelled out. "Then learn, you idiot," Gamora yelled at him. "Are you calling me a pet?" Rocket yelled furiously. "Of course not. Pets are trained," Quill said. "You mother," Rocket was yelling before he was interrupted by a flash of light near them. "Okay, so what's the problem?" Naruto asked upon seeing his friends. "You're late," Drax said simply as he gestured to the wrecked Milano. He did a double take when he saw Jennifer. "Gamora, why did you not tell us that you had another sister?" he asked her. "She's not my sister," Gamora said, shaking her head at Drax for being so forgetful. "But you and her have green skin, so you must be related," he said, looking between the two of them. "Something happened to her on Earth which caused her skin to become like this," Naruto said, trying to simplify it for Drax. "Oh," Drax said, but still continued to look between Gamora and Jennifer. "Wow, who kicked your ass?" Will asked, looking at the damage to the ship. "Who the hell are you?" Rocket asked, not recognizing Will or the others Naruto brought, besides Nebula and Cosmo. "This is Will, remember? I showed you guys pictures of her and some of my friends," Naruto said. "All you humans look alike to me," Rocket said with a shrug. "Wow, racist much?" Gwen asked. "Hey, I don't hate all humans. I just know what they are capable of," Rocket said with a scowl. "What makes you think that, little raccoon?" Shuri asked, folding her arms. "Well, for one, you all keep calling me that," Rocket yelled out as he pulled a blaster off his back before pointing at Shuri. Whoa. Rocket, it's not an insult. It's what you actually are," Naruto said, trying to calm him down. "Huh?" Rocket asked with a confused look. "You're part of a species that's on Earth, little guy," Jennifer said kindly, as she liked animals. "Wait, I'm not unique?" Rocket asked with wide eyes. No, you are. You're just the only raccoon that can talk," Will said. "So, my species are just regular animals?" Rocket asked. "Pretty much. Point being, a raccoon isn't an insult, it's your species," Crystal said. "Look, let's set up camp so you people can explain what's going on," Naruto said. "I don't think we have enough supplies to feed everyone," Quill said, seeing that there were quite a few people here. "Relax, I brought you plenty of supplies, just in case," Will said, while holding up a scroll of sealed supplies. "I don't think that rolled up piece of paper is gonna feed all of us," Drax said. "Drax, remember that ability I have that lets me keep items in my tattoos?" Naruto asked. "Oh. Very impressive of you, woman, to use it to bring us supplies," Drax said with a nod. "Okay everyone, let's set up camp," Quill said, clapping his hands together. "Will, Shuri, Crystal and Lockjaw, you guys secure the perimeter while we get to work," Naruto said. Will nodded as she grew her wings and took off, with Shuri, Crystal and Lockjaw following after her. "Your woman can fly. She must be a capable warrior," Drax said as he watched Will. "What kind of tech is she using?" Rocket asked curiously, wondering if he could get his hands on it. "Magic," Naruto said simply. "Are you kidding?" Gamora asked with a raised eyebrow. "Nope, magic is a thing on Earth," Naruto said, with Nebula nodding in agreement. "Man, a lot has changed since I left as a kid," Quill said as he scratched his head. "Well, I keep saying you should visit Peter," Gamora said with a shrug. Naruto paused at this. Peter. Since when are you two so close? He asked with a smirk. We aren't. Gamora said, a pink tinge on her cheeks. I am Groot, Groot said with a laugh. Yay. I may not know much about relationships, but even I can see you two are digging each other, Rocket said with his own smirk. Hey Rocket, you wanna help set up camp? Jennifer asked as she moved a boulder away to make space for everyone. Yay, hold on Amazon Rocket said. Who's cooking? Naruto asked, seeing Gwen helping set up a campfire. Not Drax, the Guardians all said together. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. Let's just say, his food could make Thanos himself flee in terror, Gamora said. Who? Will asked as she returned with the others. Our stepfather, Nebula said with a sigh. The one that made you a cyborg? Naruto asked with a scowl. Yes. The Mad Titan isn't exactly father of the year, Quill said with a frown. Well, we can discuss this while we eat, Will said as she unsealed what looked like a pack of hamburger patties, along with buns, cheese, tomatoes, lettuce and sauces. Oh man, I haven't had a burger since I was a kid, Quill said with a smile, rubbing his hands together while licking his lips slightly. Okay Will, you and the girl set up the buns and toppings, and I'll cook, Naruto said. What do you eat? Shuri asked Groot curiously. I am Groot, Groot said with a smile. Shuri said with a dumbfounded look. He eats like us, especially candy, funny enough, Rocket said with a chuckle. Will smiled at this and threw Groot a chocolate bar. I am Groot. Groot asked as he inspected the chocolate bar and after removing the wrapper he took a bite. After he swallowed, he smiled widely. I am Groot. He yelled happily before he ate the rest of the chocolate. Hey, if it's that good, then share. Rocket yelled as he leapt for the chocolate. I am Groot, Groot said, shaking his head in defiance as he used one hand to keep Rocket away. Oh man, I miss chocolate, Quill said with a sigh, trying to remember what it tasted like. Relax, I packed plenty. Have to make sure there is enough for Nebula, since she has a stash back home, Naruto said with a chuckle as he started cooking the burgers. Gamora quirked an eyebrow at this. She looked at her sister and smiled seeing her sheepish look and blush. Later. Everyone was eating the burgers around a campfire with moans of enjoyment from the Guardians. This is fantastic. Is all food on Terra this good? Drax asked. Yup, and this is one of the simple meals you can get, Gwen said with a smile. Oh, and so are hot dogs, Naruto added. What kind of dog do they use? Drax asked curiously while looking at Cosmo and Lockjaw. Both dogs just glared at him while growling threateningly. Don't even try it, Cosmo said warningly, with Lockjaw barking in agreement. They don't actually use dogs, but something else for the meat. Will said. Drax looked confused at this. But then why are they called hot dogs if they don't use dogs to make them? He asked. Before anyone from Earth could say anything, Gamora just shook her head at them. Don't bother trying to explain it to him, as it'll just fly over his head, she told them. How many times do I have to tell you that nothing flies over my head as my reflexes are too quick, Drax said with a frown before taking a bite out of his burger. Naruto, Will, Gwen, Crystal, Jennifer and Shuri giggled slightly at this. We definitely need to make a pit stop there, Quill Rocket said as he was very curious about what other food Earth had. I am Groot, Groot said in agreement as he gave a slight nod with a smile. Their beer isn't bad either, Howard said as he finished a can before loudly belching. Suddenly, the area was lit up by a searchlight that appeared above them. Damn party crashers, Rocket growled out as he pulled out his blaster. Naruto looked up at the ship that was flying above them and frowned slightly since he felt a massive amount of power coming from whatever was on the ship. They saw the ship land not far from the damaged Milano and soon they saw what looked like an older man with a beard come out, followed by a woman who had antennas on her head. Hey, I recognize that ship. It's the one that blasted some of the enemy when we were fleeing, Drax said. The older man smiled at this and nodded slightly. I have been looking for you for a while, Peter, he said, looking at Quill. Why's that? And for that matter, who are you and how do you know my name? Quill asked curiously. The older man smiled at this. My name is Ego, and I'm your dad, Peter, he said simply. What kind of name is that? Shuri whispered to Gwen, Jennifer, Crystal, Lockjaw and Cosmo. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. And how do we know you're telling the truth? As you could be some kind of bounty hunter or something, trying to make him lower his guard, Naruto said, crossing his arms. The Nova Corps whipped our records clean, Gamora said. Yeah, and we have been good lately, Howard said. I am Groot, Groot said, looking at Howard and Rocket pointedly while folding his arms. Well, mostly, Rocket said with a chuckle, rubbing the back of his head. I can prove I'm telling the truth, but it requires you coming to my planet, Ego said. You own your own planet? Will asked curiously. Ego chuckled at this. Well, kinda, he said. Well, you did save us. So I suppose we could go with you, Quill said with a small smile. We need to repair the ship, Rocket said. Well, we could split up and meet up later when you're done fixing the ship, Quill said with a shrug. I don't like the idea of leaving Rocket alone with no backup in case someone shows up to attack you while you're making repairs, Naruto said. Well, you could leave some of us here as backup, Crystal said as she pet Lockjaw. I can see that working, Gamora said with a nod. Okay, me and the girls will stay behind to back up Rocket and help with repairs, Will said as she gave Naruto a knowing look since she knew Naruto wanted to go with Quill. I'm cool with that, Jennifer said with a shrug. Gwen and Crystal nodded at this in agreement. I'll go with Naruto, Nebula said. That's fine with me. I'll let you all get ready, please let my assistant here know when you're ready to go, Ego said with a nod as he gestured to the woman with him before he headed back inside his ship. Naruto looked at the woman and saw her wave at everyone with a shy smile and smiled back at her. Hello, I'm Mantis, she said to everyone with a small wave. Oh, I can tell she's an innocent sweetheart, Will said with a smile at her. Behave, Naruto said, knowing what Will was thinking already. Oh, like you don't find her cute, Will grumbled to herself, knowing that Naruto had a weakness for innocent cute girls, which Mantis had in spades. Okay, let's all go pack up and get ready to go, Quill said. Everyone nodded at this and got to work. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video, bye bye.